Awesome.
Okay, hello. We're live.
We are live. Welcome, everybody. So excited and bittersweet that this is our last cooking demo of this class series, but definitely really excited to be cooking with you today from my kitchen, and Gina from her kitchen.
It's like right there.
Yeah,
I'm near my kitchen.
We're going to be making shakshuka today, which is a really delicious dish that has like tomatoes and it's almost like a stew, and then you cook eggs inside it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the history of shakshuka, but it's a really cool food. The word shakshuka just means like all mixed up, and that's really what it is. And it's presumed to be originated from either Yemen or Tunisia. And it's kind of like a tomato sort of sauce with peppers and onions, and herbs, and you cook eggs inside it. And so I'm really excited to cook it today. It's one of my favorite, just like breakfast, lunch, or dinner foods. But just also wanted to name that, like, I did not grow up making this. This is not part of my like food culture. And so I'm sure there are many other ways to make it, and feel free to say so in the chat or in the comments if you know any other ways.
I'm excited. I have not made shakshuka myself before. I've only had it in restaurants. So I'm excited to learn how to make some today.
Same. And so the first thing we're going to do when we have the recipe is going to be mincing garlic, dicing the onion, and chopping the pepper, and then heating it all in a skillet. I have a giant skillet ready for the shakshuka. And so I'll do that in a minute, but then we'll be adding the canned tomatoes. So it's whole canned tomatoes. We'll be crushing them and then adding some spices. So we've got paprika, cumin, oregano, coriander, red pepper flakes, and pepper. And then we'll add some salt and add some garbanzo beans, and simmer it. And then once it's kind of cooked up a little bit into a stew, we'll make little like spots for each egg, and we'll cover it. And we'll talk about that closer when we get there. I am going to start with these things, and I'll put the camera on it so you can see what I'm doing, and then I think Gina is going to talk a little bit about produce as well.
Yeah, so sorry, continue.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, so I'm going to start using the techniques that we've already kind of talked about, but making a flat surface. I'll be peeling this, but I'll be keeping the root intact so I can have it stick together. But you can watch as Gina goes along.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to chop and mince and dice onions, and this is a really fun, cool way to do it as well. I have not done the way that Shayna's about to show us, but I can't wait to see you do a demo of it. I'm not brave enough yet to try this method, Shayna.
I'm realizing, by the way, as I peel this onion, that I didn't do the trick that we talked about last time where you put it in the fridge. So you might see me cry again.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So you may have noticed that a lot of our recipes and a lot of our demonstrations, we really emphasize this kind of aromatic combo of garlic, onion, and oftentimes ginger. I think we've kind of used ginger a fair amount in our recipes and our demonstrations. But yeah, so, you know, instead of talking about the amazing virtues of these aromatics, I want to talk a bit about storage and how do you store produce in your pantry, on your counter, and whatnot. So I'm going to go over a couple of more common items that I have. So I looked up how to store them. So for garlic, you want to buy it when it's with the papery skin, without any green sprouts. That way it can last longer. Usually you can buy them skinned and crushed, or you can buy garlic in many different forms. But it's having it dry with the paper skin on can help it last a lot longer. And you want to store it in a cool, dark place, away from potatoes, which I don't know exactly what that is, but according to my little chart, that's what it says.
Yeah, I think potatoes kind of release something that makes the onions go bad faster.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of like those little things like what was it? Don't put avocados with bananas. Or you do want to put it with bananas so you want to ripen them faster. But I'm not like 100% sure what that is.
Yeah, a lot of
um
plants like release like an ethylene gas, I think it's called,
mm,
that
mhm.
will ripen themselves and other plants faster. So if you want something to ripen faster, you kind of want to like kind of expand on that ethylene gas. So either putting it with another fruit or vegetable or putting it in like a paper bag where it can kind of have its own gas around itself. But if you
Yeah.
don't want it to go bad quickly, like something you're storing like onions or garlic, then
Hmm.
you want to keep it away.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for that. I didn't know the name of it. But yeah, so garlic in its papery, dried form can be held in a cool, dark place for up to 3 weeks. But you know, we love garlic so much, and we encourage the use of it. Hopefully, it doesn't last 3 whole weeks, but it's okay if it does. Um, and onions, you want to buy those firm, and making sure that there are no bruises and again, no green sprouts coming out of it. And you also want to store onions in cool, dark places, and they can also last up to 3 weeks. Let's see. I want to go over a few more if Sheena has a bit more time.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So fresh tomatoes, you want to make sure that they're not too soft. You can take the smell of it um, to make sure it doesn't have any kind of rotten smells to it. And tomatoes you can store at room temperature as well for 2 to 3 days. Would you store them in the fridge also, Shayna?
Pardon?
Tomatoes? Tomatoes?
Tomatoes, some people store them in the fridge and some people store them on the counter. I actually think part of it is similarly like what kind of tomato and how fast you're going to use it. I usually store mine in the fridge, but I know a lot of people put them on the counter.
Yeah. So, according to the Cooking Matters handout I have right here, it says it can't be on the counter for up to 3 days. And if you don't expect to use these fresh tomatoes that you got within 3 days, then definitely putting in the fridge can help extend that life.
You might
I
notice,
think
by the way, that the recipe said 4 cloves of garlic, and I'm putting in like 7.
Mhm.
So put in
Right.
as many or as few as you want.
I love it. I wish I can eat some.
I know.
So for apples, I just want to go over that one as well. You can store apples at room temperature for 3 to 5 days or refrigerate them up to 3 months.
Wow.
I think this is something that a lot of people have questions about, but berries, fresh berries, you want to buy them firm and plump, no moldy spots. And it says to refrigerate unwashed. And if you can, in a single layer, it'll last up to a week. Most fresh berries.
Yeah, usually washing foods before you put them in the fridge can make their shelf life go down.
Mhm.
But you definitely want to wash it before you cook with it.
Oh, yes, important point. Then you wash it. Yeah.
Exactly. And you
Let's
didn't
see.
see it because it was some TV magic, but I did wash these ahead of time.
The garlic?
I washed the garlic, the onion, and the bell pepper. I know a lot of people don't wash their onion and garlic. I always do wash what I'm using because I feel like anything I put on my cutting board is like introducing germs into my food.
Mhm.
So if you want to peel it before it hits your cutting board, you can definitely do that instead, but I just usually wash it.
Yeah. Let's see. Bell peppers. I think bell peppers, our suggestion is that you keep those in the fridge in the crisper.
That's where this one was.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
The crisper is cool. It really like it's said to like be helpful to affect the humidity of
Yeah.
the little drawer, so it can help with the keeping crispy foods or crisp foods crisp
The
longer.
crisper. It does as it says. I'm curious if anyone has a question about any other produce and how to store those. Go ahead and put that in the chat or the comments, and I'll try to get to it if it's on my list. I'm currently holding on to some cucumbers. They're in the fridge in the crisper right now. And it says that I should not have that longer than 5 days.
Yeah, anytime the
Hopefully,
cucumbers start to get like slimy, you definitely want to start getting rid of them.
mm-hmm. I am planning on making a cucumber salad soon, so hopefully I get to that within the week.
You make a good cucumber salad, the one with the peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love that recipe.
Yeah. I wish we had some time to talk about quick pickling because it reminds me of quick pickling.
Yeah, go for it.
No, well, I don't have my talking points right now, but
Oh.
like, but I just remember fondly from Cooking Matters in person. We talked about quick pickling, and I forgot, but it's super fun and really easy.
You can
Yeah,
even
so
just do it in the fridge, like right before you, like if you start it first, you can even have it ready for the meal. I love quick pickled onions, so I like to pickle red onions, just in some like vinegar. I usually use apple cider vinegar, and I think they're so good on top of things. And I usually just put vinegar, and sometimes I put a little salt, and sometimes people put like other spices. But yeah, I think the quick pickles that you made are with rice vinegar, right?
Yeah, so I have a lot of rice vinegar left over from ramen making, and I've just been craving a lot of fresh produce. So we'll see when I make that cucumber salad.
And like we said before, you never want to use produce that's like actively already gone bad. So anything that's kind of like slimy or squishy, but things that are kind of on their way but not bad yet actually can benefit from being like a little bit pickled, in my opinion.
Here's a cool little note. If you don't have fridge space or you don't have a fridge, there is little tips and tricks to it. The basement, if you can find a nice cool spot in your basement, that's always a way from any potential critters. I think I use that trick a lot too. I used to live in a basement and I was like, oh, I don't have to put things in the fridge. It's so cold anyways.
I'm just gonna start adding the oil to the skillet. I usually don't use olive oil because it has a pretty low smoke point, but this recipe did call for it, so I'm gonna try it out. And I'm heating it on medium heat, so I'll see if it smokes or not.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of recipes do recommend using olive oil in terms of sauteing and flavoring as kind of like a base oil, and sticking to our smoke point conversations. You don't want to have it smoke or steam, and olive oil does actually have a low smoke point. So yeah, if you are using olive oil, make sure that you are using on medium heat.
Exactly. Yeah, it says over medium heat. So, and then once the oil is hot, we'll add the garlic, onions, and bell pepper for like around 5 minutes. And the reason we want the oil to be hot is because if you have the oil that's not hot, it'll actually, like the vegetables will absorb that oil. So you want to have the oil hot so that it'll actually cook in that oil. And I'll start cooking the oil now, and I'll try to position it so you can still see me. And it's 2 tablespoons.
I really like that you're making this recipe, Shana, because it you can make as much as you want, as much as your skillet lets you.
Exactly. And it's good. I know I live with a lot of people, and so it's nice to have meals that can like feed a larger group of people. But if it's something you wanted to make on your own, and you maybe are just eating for 1 or 2, you can definitely scale it down, or you can make a lot ahead of time. And Gina can tell you how to store it in the longer run.
Yeah. A nice little sip of coffee. Or I'm sorry, you don't drink coffee. Tea.
It's just like a kind of gray day. I feel like you gotta have some tea.
Yeah. So Shakshuka sounds like a great recipe because you can shorten it sounds like you typically eat it during breakfast, or at least Shana eats it for breakfast. And we were talking about in this last session that sometimes breakfast takes a long time to prepare. So a few things you can do ahead of time is that you can prepare the tomato mixture ahead of time, or the sauce, which I believe is step 1 and 2. So you can do that ahead of time and make sure it cools down enough. and put it in a glass airtight container. Most anything that requires that has tomato in it, I feel like should be kept in a glass or metal container, because it might stain, or
Oh yeah.
it might stain your plastic Tupperwares if you have those. I noticed that, like, if you let tomato linger too long, it'll just kind of always have tomato.
That's funny. You're totally right.
Yeah. Well, I think we mentioned it in the recipe. I'm not so sure, but yeah. So you can make the tomato sauce ahead of time, put it in a glass jar that is airtight, and I believe that can last. What's this say? It lasts a few days, but you can make that ahead time, like the night before. Yeah, and then pick up from step 3 to 5 when you do want to make it. And I believe once we have our fresh shakshuka and we have some leftovers, what are the tips for leftovers? Let's see. Keep it in a glass container as well, airtight. Again, it's very tomatoey. And when you want to reheat leftovers again, you want to put it in the fridge. You can heat it up over medium heat and add a little bit more liquid to it, since it may have dried up. But yeah, it's a great recipe for just bulk cooking, batch cooking, making ahead, breakfast, savory breakfast.
And you could eat it anytime too. You can eat it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whatever works best for you. I feel like a lot of people, at least in the United States, are like eggs, breakfast. But you can eat eggs at any time. They're a really good protein.
Mm-hmm. If you were to intentionally have leftovers, Shayna, would you save the egg to make later, or would we make that first?
If I were making leftovers with this, and I have before, I've kept like the liquid portion separate from the egg, and then I've added the egg. I think the egg is something I like to eat fresh. Mm-hmm. I personally don't really like reheated eggs, which is more of a preference than like a culinary tip. But yeah, you could also, I think you maybe already mentioned, but I couldn't hear everything because the pan was actually much hotter than I accidentally put it on high, which is not what I meant to do. But if you wanted to freeze it, you could too.
I see. Yeah, I did not mention it. That's a good idea.
And I know we've been talking about pantry meals a lot. I just wanted to say, like, these are things that are often in my pantry, and everyone's pantry is totally different. But I always love to have canned tomatoes of some kind, chickpeas. I love onions and garlic. And then bell peppers are actually my number one favorite vegetable. So, and then the parsley, which I will add at the very end, is actually from our garden. It grows very easily. So if you wanted to grow it like in a window ledge or even outside, it's kind of, I think it's a little bit harder to start it in the winter, but if it's something you start in the summer, you get parsley. Because I know that whenever I buy parsley, I never eat it fast enough. So I always like growing it because I can have exactly the amount that I want.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, oftentimes you do buy a lot of fresh herbs, and they sell it in portions that are way bigger than you need. Typically.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just going to talk about the spices while I'm waiting for like 2 more minutes before it's been 5 minutes. We're going to be putting in some coriander, which is just the seed of the cilantro plant. I know you can't smell it through the screen, but it smells good.
It's my current favorite spice.
Really?
It smells so good.
Paprika, which I don't know. I don't really know how to describe smells over the internet, but it smells good. Crushed red pepper, cumin, which I actually have to see. This is dangerously low. Got to check it out. Hopefully we have more because cumin's my number one favorite. And then oregano. And so it's really interesting, like in the United States, I guess going back, like a lot of places, a lot of regions, a lot of cultures like have different herbs that are used for health and wellness, either like by putting them in food or by making them in medicine. And it's not something we usually talk about because it's not like really named or regulated by the FDA, but it is something that there's like a large culture of, and we know that like, I don't know, people's cultural history is like very, very important. So a lot of these herbs are actually really good for us in other ways too. And I'll see if I can dig up some resources to send out in the next email, but it's really cool to try, you know, using herbs for your health in your food. Like garlic is really something that helps. I like whenever I'm like worried about getting sick in the winter, I just eat like 3 times the garlic, as you saw when I did it in this recipe. So that's something you can learn about, either like herbs and spices from your own culture or from others if you're interested.
So what are the spices we're using for this recipe?
Oregano, cumin, coriander, paprika, and crushed pepper. And it actually said coriander or oregano. I'm going to use both because, like, why not? But you can use whichever one you have and can sub if you need it. I'm going to check.
Yeah. Spices are super fun like that. You can, something seems interesting at the store. You came upon a new spice that you want to try out. Spices are fun to kind of play around with because, you know, you don't need the exact ratio all the time. You can increase the amount of something, decrease the amount of something according to what you like and according to what you want to try out.
And everyone has different tastes too. Like one thing that's really cool about this recipe, like shakshuka, this is a food that is thought to be from Tunisia or from Yemen, but there's kind of like a version of this in a lot of different cultures. Like I know that in Italy, there's something called eggs in purgatory, which is like eggs cooked in like a tomatoey sauce. I know there's like different types of shakshuka in different places and all around like different continents even. And even like the name shakshuka is used to mean like slightly different things, slightly different recipes. So this is more of a recipe, I think, like maybe for an Israeli shakshuka, but there's so many different kinds that you could make.
That's so cool. Yeah. How's the oil doing?
It's good. It looks like it's time to add the herbs, and I'm just pulling up the recipe so I remember how much to do. It's hard for me to like look at the screen and the recipe at the same time. But I'm going to start adding them now. I'll show you the food for a minute.
Okay, looking good.
It said to cook it until the end of 4 or 5 minutes.
Oh wait, Shanna, I can't hear you too well. What was that?
Oh, sorry. It says to cook until the onions are clear or around 5 minutes, and it's been over 5 minutes, but the onions aren't clear. So I'm just letting it kind of hang while I add some of the spices. And I'll add them right now. There's paprika. It's 1/2 teaspoon. I don't usually measure my spices when I cook just on my own, but whenever I'm trying out a recipe that we're doing in class, I like to just to make sure that the ratios are good.
Yeah, me too. I'm a lot more of a chaotic chef when I'm cooking for myself. Yeah, so Shanna kind of touched on the history of shakshuka, and you know that's something that we would love to like point out with food. We often talk about the stories that food tells about the current system, but food has such a intricate history that it also talks about past politics and immigration and just the origins of most of our favorite foods are just so full of interesting stories, such as last week when we made ramen. I don't know how much we went into it. I kind of forgot at this point. But yeah, like ramen tells a story of Chinese refugees landing in Japan and bringing over these noodles that they modified soba noodles with in Japan and added wheat to it. And it also tells the story of when the Americans occupied Japan and increased the imports of wheat, thus making wheat a lot more affordable to use and thus making ramen a lot more affordable, popular go-to noodles. Yeah, and just even thinking about things like, say, fry bread and the origins of that, it's traditional. It's traditional now, but it like in terms of like natives making and being familiar within their cuisine, but it comes from like, but it's not their like indigenous cuisine. Fry bread. It came from the U.S. Forcing the removal of Native Americans to a land that they're not familiar with, and they had to live off of US rations of like sugar, lard, and white flour. It's just very interesting when you think about some of the foods and where they came from. Let's see, one more is like banh mi's, Vietnamese sandwiches. They use baguettes in their sandwiches, and that's because of the French occupation in Vietnam. Yeah, it's very, very interesting if you just look into where your favorite foods came from.
Absolutely. Ooh. I think food and migration is like kind of true in almost every recipe.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm squishing the tomatoes, by the way. The recipe said to, because they're peeled like whole tomatoes. So I'm squishing them into smaller pieces, which is actually very fun.
So did you buy them, are they canned, peeled whole tomatoes that you bought? Okay.
Exactly.
And we also used canned crushed tomatoes. I think they sell those in stores. Yeah, canned crushed.
Yeah, you can get them crushed, diced, whole. There's tons of different ways.
Yeah.
They do kind of splatter. I'm gonna need to do some kitchen cleaning after this, so that's a good thing to know about. You might want to squish them in like a bowl or something first.
Are you squishing them with your hand?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a great activity if you have children in the kitchen who want to, who you want to involve with. It sounds like this is a great spot to plug them in on. They'll be quite crushed by the time you need them.
Exactly. So I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna cover and simmer it for 7 minutes, and then uncover and simmer it for 5.
Okay. I'm curious if anyone watching right now has any histories of their favorite food that they know of that they want to share.
Would you say, Gina, if anyone watches what?
Anyone watching currently has a history of their favorite food that they know of that they want to share?
Oh, yeah, I would also love to know that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of mine too. What about, do you have one, Gina?
I was just thinking about Hawaiian food and how, like what we know Hawaiian food to be right now. Yeah. There's a lot of influences from a lot of, you know, the US's first Asian immigrants to the country and how they were working on the farms in Hawaii and bringing over a lot of their cuisines. And the order of, you know, immigrants that came to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Like Spam. Where does Spam come from?
The United States is what.
Yeah.
I think it's so.
I think
I know it's popular
like,
in a lot of places.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like if you think about Spam musubi, like where'd that come from?
I know that one of the best foods I've ever eaten is called doner kebab. And is from, I think it's a type of kebab, and I'm trying to remember. I know that like there was a large influx of immigrants to Germany. I think like Berlin and a lot of places who like brought a lot of their cultural foods with them, and so doner kebab is like it's a kind of like a combo of some types of kebab of like Middle Eastern cuisine mixed with some like aspects of being in Germany, and like you mentioned before, like trying to work with the ingredients that you have.
Yeah. I think I looked into that real fast and it said like Turkish immigrants in Germany first created it.
Yeah, but I think there's like a lot of things like that. Like, isn't pizza food that was like kind of created by Italian immigrants somewhere else? That might not be a fact, so look into that before.
Yeah. Check us, please.
Oh, I see in the chat. Naomi mentioned that she came from Vietnam and loves banh mi. Gina, you mentioned the baguette, which came from France, and banh mi uses that type of bread. Yeah, so absolutely. It's definitely part of like the colonization of Vietnam from France, which is like brings a lot of really like really terrible things. And it's just like interesting to see how food changes from like what's available. And then we talked about like curry powder too.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting because, you know, we have to eat, we need to eat. And often these stories about where food comes from, our favorite foods, it really kind of talks about the sense of resilience that comes from people who need to create something delicious and filling and affordable. And just kind of what comes from that and just refining that with the experience. So yeah, there's a lot of connection between history from present time to when, you know, when they were first kind of created, that it's very consistent that you can kind of, look into.
One thing I wanted to mention, I guess very much shifting gears, but it's just about like the protein in this recipe. So I know we always talk about trying to get at least 3 food groups. And so this recipe is going to have eggs in it, and then it's also going to have the beans. I think I actually don't know. I added a whole can already, so hopefully it's a whole can. Yeah, 1 can.
Of beans? Okay.
It's optional. Of beans, and then 4 to 6 eggs. And the recipe serves, it doesn't actually say. I think it serves 6. Most of our recipes serve 6. So maybe we can do some math together. Okay, there's 12 eggs in here. We're going to use 6. Each one is 6 grams. So 6 times 6 is 36. And then we've got beans. So this is 3.5 servings per container of 7 grams. So 7 times 3 is 21, is like around 24. So 24 plus 36 is 60. So 60 grams divided by 6 servings is 10 grams a serving of protein, which is a lot.
Amazing math. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Live. Brave.
I just wanted to mention one other thing, is that this is my receipt from buying this food. And so I know we try to make all of our recipes under $10. And so it's this can of, this big can of tomatoes, which I think I already moved, it's back there somewhere, was $1.59. The beans were 89 cents. I actually bought a whole head of garlic for it, which was 99 cents, which felt like a lot. The bell pepper was $1.79. But I see them on sale a lot for $1 each, which is when I buy a lot of them. And then the eggs were $1.99, but then there was a savings of $1.50 on something. I actually don't know what it was. And then an onion. Oh, the savings was on the eggs. Got it. And then the onion was 77 cents. So it was actually a total of $8 for the recipe, which I thought was pretty good. That doesn't include the spices, which are usually the most expensive part. But like we talked about, like buying them in bulk is a really good option.
Yeah, spices kind of acts like an investment. The initial cost is pretty high, but you know, using it throughout so many of your recipes, and you know, it being a great salt replacement. So it's a good idea to use spices. So don't be too afraid of the initial cost. Yeah.
And I realized I forgot to set a timer, so I'm going to take the top off. I don't know if it's been 7 minutes, but I'm just going to hope it's true. I'll take the top off of that so the steam.
What will you be looking for? Softness in the veggies?
So when you cook something and you want to cover it for part of it and usually uncover it, you want to like cover it so all the flavors can mix together. And then when you uncover it, it can get some of that like moisture out of it so it can thicken up.
I see.
So I'm like checking for the vegetables to be soft for sure, but also kind of like, I don't really know how to describe it, but like cohesion within it, that it's like kind of one thing. I'll check it real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember looking at my chana sog receipt. I had bought enough for 3 of the recipes that we had. Um, and I remember it came out to about $25 for 3 of the recipes that we suggest. And like Shana mentioned earlier, our recipes are typically for servings of 6. So I just remember it was just so affordable. Again, excluding the spices. What was that? Shanna, you're on mute right now.
Sorry. $25 for 3.
For 3, yeah, because I try to buy, no surprise, I try the recipe ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get extra recipe like parts and ingredients just in case. So I had enough for 3, and it was $25, not including the spices because I already had the spices. Yeah.
I just took the top off of it and I'll check it in a minute, but I wanted to know from anyone in the chat or from you, Gina, what's your favorite way to eat eggs?
Ooh. Let's see. Well, for me, I really like to just hard boil 2 eggs in the morning. It's a really good way to like turn on the stove, kind of do my morning thing and like go back to it and it's done. I have how to make hard boiled eggs like very much dialed in my head. Put it in there, put it in water. Water, makes like is above the eggs cold and you heat it. And when it boils, you put it on a simmer for 7 minutes. It's, yeah.
I like it. Is it hard? Is it usually hard boiled, like pretty cooked in the middle?
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, hard boiled. I believe it'd be like 4 minutes if you want a medium boiled egg. Yeah, that's my current going way to eat eggs. Curious if anyone else has their current favorite ways to eat egg. I mean, I want to try the Shakshuka recipe. Maybe that's going to be my new favorite way to eat eggs.
I have a couple favorite ways because I actually eat a lot of eggs. They're like one of my favorite types of protein. I eat probably eggs like every day. I think I mentioned last time when we talked about pantries that my household, there's 4 of us and we bought 60 eggs by accident and we've already eaten them. It's been like 2 weeks.
It wasn't a problem.
It wasn't a problem. I really like scrambled eggs. And a tip that actually my roommate taught me is to add a teaspoon of water for each egg. And so that kind of helps them steam on the inside instead of getting too hard. So you get really soft scrambled eggs. I know a lot of people use milk for a similar effect. I think I've mentioned before, I can't digest a lot of milk. So I use water and it works totally great. And then there's a lot of like discourse, I guess, in the egg world about when to add salt. Some people think that if you add salt too early, it makes the eggs tougher. And some people just kind of add it early. So you can maybe do some experimenting and see what works best for you. I always add the pepper while it's cooking. Like I add the pepper to the scramble while I'm mixing it in the bowl because I think pepper tastes better when it's cooked a little bit, but it's totally a preference thing.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure you have a hot pan.
Yeah. I think that's I hear most people preferring pepper after everything's said and done. But it's interesting to hear that you prefer it cooked a little bit.
Yeah, I think it kind of just changes the flavor a little bit. I also really like boiled eggs like you do. I like a soft boil personally, so I usually put the eggs in the cold water, bring it to the boil, and then once it's boiled, I actually turn the heat off. I keep it on the same burner, but I turn the heat off. And I put the lid on the pot and I let it stand for 6.5 or 7 minutes. And that for me is like the perfect doneness. Obviously more if you want it more hard boiled, but I like a little bit soft boiled. And then I actually learned from a Cooking Matters volunteer, Charlotte, shout out to Charlotte, how to make poached eggs, which I really like. A lot of people will make them in a pot, but she taught me actually to make them in a pan because it's shallower and it's easier to like scoop up the egg.
Oh, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like easier to like retrieve it. So I would use this specific pan if I want to do it. And so just because the shape is good. But if you bring it to a boil, you can add some vinegar if you want. It kind of helps the egg cook up. But you want to make sure that the water is like kind of at a simmer. Add some vinegar. Some people will like do a little swirl.
Mm-hmm.
And then an important part, and I actually don't know why, so some food scientists might, but if you want to crack the eggs into like a cup first, I usually do like a little glass bowl and then kind of slide it into the water. You don't want to crack it directly in. I don't know why. I usually cook them one at a time. I do like 2 to 3 minutes, and then I remove them.
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone knows exactly why. That's a really cool slotted spoon.
Thanks, Gina.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that putting in a cup and then pouring it in slowly doesn't splatter as much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're already avoiding some splatter with the shallow pan. But I think the gentle pouring of the egg into the water makes a lot of sense in terms of keeping a very nice poached egg. Like contained. Yeah, because that's my problem. I think whenever I make poached eggs, it gets very messy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lose all structural integrity.
I'm going to bring this over
Yeah.
to show the.
Yeah. Let's see this.
So it's going to be time to make the wells. And it's going to be hard for me to kind of hold my computer, but I'm going to try. I'm going to make 4 eggs.
Okay.
I'm going to make a little like nesting spot for it. Can you still hear me okay?
I can hear you, but can you make sure the camera sees some of these wells after you're done?
Yes. And I don't think I have enough skill to crack the eggs while holding my computer, but I'm going to crack an egg into each of the wells. And then I will, where's the recipe? I'm going to space out each well because they're each going to have their own egg in it. And then I'm going to crack 1 egg into each well, cover it, and let it sit for 5 minutes. So that will make the whites cook, but the inside yolk will be soft.
Oh my gosh. I wish I was in the same room as you so I can have this.
I'm going to see. I don't think you'll be able to see me, but you'll know that I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me okay, though?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you typically eat shakshuka with? Do you put it on bread? Do you just eat it like that? You put it on rice?
Really, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I really like shakshuka with feta, parsley, and some bread.
That sounds amazing.
And I realize our demo is going a little bit longer than usual, so if you're still on, that's amazing. And if you have to go and watch later, that's also great.
Yeah, so right after you crack the eggs in, you cover it and you cook it for how long again? 5 minutes? Okay. And then is it done at that point?
And then it's done.
And it's done. Okay. That sounds good.
So I'm going to get the parsley ready. My cooking area is a little bit cluttered, but I'm going to, I usually like to group the stems together. I think I did this when we were making the bean burgers.
Yeah, I'm always impressed by this technique.
Thank you. It's just kind of easier and fun for me. I don't like peeling off each one.
This is far more entertaining than peeling one leaf at a time.
You kind of use like a sharp knife to sort of scrape it off, like shave it.
Yeah.
And then I love the smell of parsley. I forgot. If you get some stems in there, it's totally fine. I think they taste good personally, and then I'll go over a little bit. And then I'll have it with some feta, but you could have it cheese-free. Cheese isn't for you. And you can also add meat to it. I know we have a lot of protein already with 10 grams from the per serving from the beans and the egg. But if you wanted to add meat, you could add like ground lamb could be good, maybe ground turkey. And so you want to just cook that before and then add it in so you know that it's cooked all the way through.
Awesome. Yeah. Samantha in the chat says that she wants to make this recipe tomorrow, and I think I'm going to find a way to also make this weekend.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that some people add a lot of spinach and they make it like with green shakshuka, like the sauce is really green. That could be really good. This is a little bit different, but there's a dish called like huevos rancheros, which is with like fried eggs that are in like a tortilla tomato sauce. And that's kind of like a similar concept too. And so a lot of these foods have been made kind of as like a leftover food. So like whatever you have, throw it in a pot, add some eggs. And like Samantha said, that's definitely a good brunch idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like you just mentioned a great recipe. Whatever you have, heat it up, throw an egg on it.
Exactly.
Bam.
Which
meal.
is good with the ramen too.
Yes. Okay, yeah, so you're right. We are quite a bit over time. So we're gonna call it here. I think that's it. Do you want to plate it or do you want to just call it here?
I think that it still has maybe 2 minutes, but I could maybe show it.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
I don't know if I'm supposed to take the lid off, but I will just for the fans.
How are the eggs? Ooh, look at that. Looking good.
Mm-hmm. It honestly does look really good. And I'm gonna make some toast to go with it. And I'll put this parsley on top, and then I have some leftover feta. But you could do a different cheese or a different herb. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. I think that's it. That's Shakshuka. And that is our week 6 recipe. I think,
Awesome.
yeah.
And
we'll
if you want to share any pictures with us, please do. The hashtag is Cooking Matters at Home, and we would love to see any pictures. And yeah, and similarly, if you have any thoughts about this demo or about the class in general, we'll be sending out a survey later today.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome.